Cybermen were defeated. The victors of 1 billion battles broken, an empire of might and terror fallen. Their weaknesses exploited, their armies outfought, their conquests surrendered. Every empire has its time, and every empire falls. But that which is dead can live again in the hands of a believer.
Hello and welcome to Who Watches Who, a Doctor Who podcast with me, Matthew, and as always, we are joined with... Haha, fuck you. Who are we joined with? Who's here? Who's on the call?
Hello, I'm Scott.
Yes, he is Scott, and he is here every week, like some sort of fool. This week, we are continuing our dive into Chris Chibnall with the Chibnall month, as we are looking at Ascension of the Cyberman. It is part 2 of a 3-part finale. Technically, we covered at the end of last month, we covered The Haunting of Villa Diodati, which really introduces the main villain for this 2-part finale. It's a weird thing, but it's kind of cool. And this week and next week, we will be looking at Ascension of the Cyberman, and then, of course, The Timeless Children, or The Timeless Child, whatever the fuck the episode's called. But this week it is Ascension of the Cybermen, I should say, which we all know very famously aired on the 23rd of February 2020, which was, of course, a Sunday, as Chibnall liked to air his episodes on a Sunday. Very strange. Never really been a fan of Sunday airs. Yourself?
Sunday airs are okay to me. It makes sense more logistically for the BBC to move it to Sundays because Saturdays there's way more competition. But that doesn't excuse the low ratings. So.
But I want it Saturday. I want it on Saturday. And of course, this episode aired 2 years, 6 months, and 20 days ago. Somehow, it has been 2.5 years since this episode aired. It's absolutely ridiculous. At the time, the US president was, of course, Donald Trump, and the UK Prime Minister was Boris Johnson. Both of them, thankfully, no longer sitting in office. The top film at the box office was the exact same film as it was when we were covering The Haunting of... whatever the fuck it was called, Villa Diodati. So, do you remember what that film was?
Sonic, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was indeed. Sonic the Hedgehog, one of the strongest performing films of the year 2020, and definitely had nothing to do with any extenuating circumstances. In the news for this day, China's Supreme Leader Xi Jinping has described the country's COVID-19 outbreak as China's largest health emergency since 1949. The first major COVID-19 outbreak in Europe happens in Italy with 152 cases and 3 deaths, prompting emergency measures locking down 10 towns in Lombardy. And President Moon Jae-in in South Korea puts the entirety of South Korea in high alert, empowering the government to lock down cities after 602 cases of COVID-19 are reported with 6 deaths. That COVID thing, that looks like it's gonna kick off into something a bit spooky, isn't it? You know?
Oh God. What was your opinion at the time of the COVID thing?
I was like, oh, this is gonna be bad, isn't it? I remember in February I would have just been wrapping up shooting a short film I was making. For somebody and chatting with him, and I was like, hey, stuff's looking bad with that. This might be the last time we're filming for a while. Because this COVID thing's looking bad. And I was correct, because it was a interesting year, 2020, wasn't it? An interesting year.
I was half expecting it to be kind of rough, maybe shut down the country for like 6 months, something like that. But instead that turned into
a year and a bit.
Just a little over 2 years, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, it's still going on, but everybody's too caring about the Queen now to even fucking consider it. Like,
the only way people would care now about COVID is if we said she died of COVID. And they'd be like, oh no, we have to protect people from COVID.
But like, they won't do that after the fucking billions of people that have been crowding the city streets. Oh yeah, the Queen died like as we were recording last week's podcast. It was very funny.
We recorded a podcast in the morning, and then later on we decided to play a game of Among Us with other people. And during that Among Us,
we are 12. We are 12-year-olds. So.
We are playing Among Us, and the Queen died.
The way I always imagined it would happen. But as we turn our eye to history to look at the 23rd of February, we find that it was a very interesting day. Not a lot happens in history on the 23rd of February, except a lot of things end up getting released. It's quite an interesting day for media to release things. Our first example of that is in 1940. Is very relevant for something that's just come out, actually, with Walt Disney's animated movie Pinocchio being released for the first time ever. And of course, just recently we had the new live action one release, which is getting horrific reviews, and I'm not surprised because it looks terrible.
Every Disney live action remake is like, original. It was a great movie. Let's do exactly the same, but somehow worse.
So let's do the same, but make it ugly and take away all its charm. Billions of dollars.
It's great.
Yeah,
the original was a fun movie from what I remember. I haven't seen it in years.
I haven't seen it since I was a kid, and I remember it being fine. It's weird, but it's fine.
The famous donkey scene. Jesus Christ, that scared me.
Yeah, that's the stuff I remember as well. Jumping forward to 1996, we have another release of a film extremely similar to Pinocchio with Trainspotting, directed by Danny Boyle, based on the book by Irvine Welsh, starring Ewan McGregor, Robert Carlyle, and Johnny Lee Miller. Opened up in cinemas in the UK and Ireland. Have you ever seen Trainspotting?
I think I might have at one point. It might have been on Channel 4 late at night.
Yeah.
In 2009 or something. I can't remember anything about it, to be honest.
Good film about heroin. In 1997, scientists in Scotland, that's where we are, announced that they have cloned an adult mammal, producing a lamb named Dolly, which is super cool. And we would 100% have cloned humans by this point if they didn't completely ban cloning and make it very illegal, because it's against God, I guess, was their reasoning. Which is dumb, because I think there's a lot of practical uses for cloning.
I feel like there's already been a cloned human, but it's just kept top secret, and the clone is just around there somewhere, like Jeff Bezos. He feels like a clone.
Yeah, though, don't you think if you could clone people's livers and kidneys, organ transplants, you wouldn't be on waiting lists anymore because you could just get a freshly cloned one, I feel like being able to clone at least parts of humans would be a advantageous thing, but fucking God said fuck off, so we were told, that goddamn lamb, it's a monster in the front of God. In 1999, the British TV drama Queer as Folk, written by Russell T Davies, starring Aidan Gillen, Craig Kelly, and Charlie Hunnam, premieres on Channel 4 for the first time ever. Supposed to be good. I've never seen Queer as Folk, but Russell T Davies, isn't it?
Yeah, I've never seen it myself, but before Russell T Davies jumps on to do another series of Doctor Who, I think I might just go through his entire career.
Jeez, that's a lot of TV.
It's a long fucking career.
Yeah, that's a lot of TV, yeah. In 2016, famously the darkest year of history, in the U.S. primary elections in Nevada, the Republican primary elections, that is, Mr. 1 Donald J. Trump wins with 45.9% of the vote. And everybody collectively went, oh, shit.
I think I was still at the point of thinking, there's no way he's going to win the actual presidency because people aren't going to be that stupid to believe him and all that shit. But
I honestly, I never thought he would win. Ever. I never thought he had a chance. I was like, there's no way he's getting nominated. Then he got nominated, and I was like, he can't win. Look at him. He's a fucking idiot. And then he won, and I was like, oh my God. And then Brexit happened, and I was like, oh my God. And then the Tories won the most seats ever, and I was like, oh my God. Elections aren't good. I've never had an election where I've come away going, yay!
2016, a bad year in general. I think it was the same year David Bowie died and Alan Rickman died.
It was the year where loads of celebrities died. Yeah.
Rough year.
It was a bad year.
in hindsight, not as bad as 2020.
Well, somehow it keeps getting worse.
You know, the worst part about 2020 was probably the episode after this, the Timeless Children.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's the worst thing to ever happen in history, is what you're saying on record for dozens of people to hear.
Yeah. There's no takesies, backsies.
That's true. It's the internet. It's here forever, Scott. But that is all that I have got for the On This Day history. Why don't you take us into the writing off section?
Yeah, well, this is obviously written by Chris Chibnall. We've talked about him a million times.
Who's that?
But obviously this is Chris Chibnall month, and this is where we're going over his career as the showrunner of Doctor Who. And what are your thoughts of him as a showrunner in general?
I think that my thoughts with Chris Chibnall as a showrunner are conflicted. Because I think I always want Chris Chibnall to be better than he is. I always try to see the good bits in Chris Chibnall. You know, I always want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I always be like, no, maybe he's doing something. Maybe he's building to something. Maybe he's got a plan for this. And he never fucking does, but I keep giving him chances. I'm currently rewatching season 11 in my spare time. And I'm loving it. I'm enjoying it way more than I did the first time. There's loads of good shit in there. You know, there's loads of good character bits and good writing bits. And I'm fascinated to get back into watching season 12 and then revisiting Flux again. Because I'm just like, what the fuck? Is it been good this entire time? And I've just been so jaded that I've just been like not willing to accept any of the good parts. Or does he just like halfway through season 12 drop the ball and fumble it for an entire season, because I don't know what, because we've seen Chris Chibnall write good scripts. We've seen him write good shows. I don't understand what happened with him as showrunner. It's the most confusing thing. Yourself?
Yeah, Chris Chibnall is a bit of a conundrum, because I remember really liking series 11. I think it has a few weak episodes here and there, but that's every series of Doctor Who. I think it might, in terms of like all of the showrunners' first season as Doctor Who showrunners, I think his series is probably the worst. But compared to all the first seasons of each Doctor, I think his first season is on par with it's better than series 8, Peter Capaldi's first season.
Peter Capaldi's first season is fucking awful. It's such a bad season. Yeah.
And I think it might be around the same quality, if not slightly better than Series 2.
Yeah, I could see that. Season 2, it's got a bit... It's Series 2 is definitely a mixed bag. It's still trying to figure itself out. But yeah.
Series 11 has some fucking amazing episodes like Rosa, which doesn't quite hit the highest high, but it's still very good. And Demons of Punjab is like the best episode of Doctor Who in years.
The recurring issue I have with season 11 is all of the villains fall flat. Like, in Rosa, it's time-traveling space Nazis. They just kind of get rid of, don't worry about them. In Demons of Punjab, there's not really a villain. It's you know, more about that family conflict, which is why it's the best episode. But in, like, Kerblam, like, the villain, at the end, they're like, oh, fuck, I don't know how to justify you being a bad guy, so, And then I just finished watching The Witchfinder's Assistant. The villain in that is, like, this weird tree slug thing. It's a really fun episode, but, like, the villain, they just kind of just get rid of it at the end. It's like, okay, we got rid of it, you know, but the fun part of that episode comes from the guy whose name I forget playing King James, because he's just fucking chewing the seat.
Yeah, Alan Cumming is amazing in that episode. Yes. He is so fucking good.
He is great. But yeah, and like in like the Arachnids in the UK, like the villain is literally giant spiders that were mutated from toxic waste. It's the most classic Who storyline that's ever been in New Who, and it's fucking shit. Like the villains just never ever hit in season 11, and the villains never hit in any of the episodes, to be fair.
Yeah, series 11 was where Chibnall was like, I don't want to do any re-established villains. I want to create my own villains, just create a new scratch. And then all of a sudden in Series 12, he's like, okay, here's the Daleks, here's the Jadoon, here's the Cybermen, here's the Master. And it kind of got a bit overboard, I think. And I think Series 11 tried to step away from Doctor Who's lore. And Series 12 was like, okay, we're going to re-establish the lore and change shit. For no reason, really. And we'll get to that next week, obviously.
See, but it's hard with Chibnall's era because I think out of every Doctor, more so than any Doctor, this one plays for nostalgia a lot more. Like Jodie's constantly flinging around the psychic paper, which Capaldi and Matt Smith did occasionally, but it's like every other episode Jodie's got the psychic paper out. There's the episode where she pulls out the fez. She refers to David Tennant's era a lot as well. Like she talks about being with the giant wasp and Agatha Christie and stuff like that, and is referring back to, the golden years of Doctor Who and playing off that nostalgia way more than the other Doctors are. So it's no surprise to me that in Series 12 he went, fuck it, just the Cybermen and the Master and just everybody's back, I don't care.
Yeah, and then you talk about Series 13, I think that gets even messier because it's all one continuous story, but everything's just so connected. We still have the Cybermen, we still have the Daleks, we have the Sontarans, we have a weird Snake Man who doesn't really account to anything. We have Swarm. We have so many villains, and
the
it just
Doctor's
gets
mom.
overboard.
The Doctor's mom. Time. We have Time. Time's there, and they're also a planet.
Yeah, it gets to the point where it's too many ideas. Whereas Series 11 feels like it's very basic. Feels like it's very kind of grounded for Doctor Who. Feels like it's just here's a sci-fi adventure. You don't have to look into a series arc or anything. Whereas from Series 12, it's like, okay, we have to establish a big arc for this season.
Mm-hmm.
And the arc kind of falls flat because Chris Chibnall is kind of going for the long game, but also he's not interested in the arc at the same time. It's very strange.
It's difficult. It's, I don't know. I don't know how you would approach it, because I think the idea of Flux is a really cool idea, having a continuous story through Doctor Who, which is something that we've never really had. Usually it's episodic and then like there'll be like a 2-parter or a 3-parter that's connected to it.
Well, I mean, we do have Trial of the Time Lord and also the Keys of Time, which is from the classic series.
I'm talking about the reboot.
Yeah.
I'm just in the specific modern era of Doctor Who. Like the most continuous storyline I can think of is the Silence before Flux, because that was like this huge overarching story. But with Flux, it's, every episode leads into the next one, but it felt so fucking disjointed. Yeah. And I think that's the issue when you come in with something like, I'm going to change... Hang on, I need to burp. When you come in with something and you're like, I'm going to change the entire lore, I'm just going to completely rewrite the entire show's history. There's such this ridiculous scope, especially with a show like Doctor Who, that you end up getting lost in the fucking weeds because you end up having to try and explain things that you really don't need to explain, and you start getting lost down in weird rabbit holes and forgetting about something that you mentioned like 10 minutes ago, and it gets completely messy. But I guess that's part of the risk and part of the reward if you can nail it. It's just, I don't think Chibnall really nailed it.
Yeah, like when we started Flux, we thought episode 1 was disjointed, but also we had a lot of faith in what Flux would be.
We had a lot of
optimism because, like, when Swarm, the villain, is revealing himself to be a villain from when the Doctor doesn't remember, and we were like, okay, that's a brilliant concept, an idea of the Doctor not knowing the villain, but the villain knows the Doctor's every single weakness. That's a fun concept, and it doesn't go anywhere. There's some good ideas in there, but it just doesn't go anywhere. It just kind of falls flat towards the end.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it really fell flat towards the end when the Doctor. I remember just checking out when the Doctor was with her mum and the Ood, and then she was on the planet Time, and Swarm and his sister just got killed, and then she was like, "I'm gonna genocide everybody with the guy," and then I was like, "Fuck it, I don't give a shit anymore at this point."
Yeah, and then they introduced the Doctor's mum, who was like, oh yeah, I adopted you essentially, and I basically child abused you, but also I'm going to die now, and you're never going to mention me ever again.
Yeah.
like the Doctor just kind of goes through the story arc the same as where she left off. She doesn't really react. Well, she reacts to things, but it's not really... She doesn't feel proactive in her own story.
It's weird because hearing Chibnall talk about the Timeless Child really makes the story better in my eyes, because he comes at it from this adoption, because obviously he was adopted as a child. He comes at it with this adoption angle and not knowing who your real parents are and not knowing your actual background and your history and, etc., etc. And it gives all this flavor and context to the Timeless Child, where I really understand where he's coming from. And then, like, I think of it in the context of the show, and I'm like, it doesn't fucking translate. Like, I don't know. Like, there's a missing. You're missing something here, and you can't quite grasp on what exactly it is.
There needs to be an emotional core to this adoption storyline, but the Doctor just doesn't feel like she has any emotions towards what's going on. Like, we'll go into it next week, but basically, she spends the entire episode of part 2 just reacting to stuff, but we don't really get an understanding of where her headspace is. She just gets a monologue for like 15 minutes from the Master, and that's basically it. And we never really understand what her point of view is, how she feels about it, what she's going to do about it.
I think
very odd.
I also think it kind of suffered, as I remember, you know, people were fan theorying when this episode came out, and we were waiting for the next week's episode about, like, why would the Master there? What information does the Master have about the Timeless Child? And I remember there was a theory that, you know, the Timeless Child's actually, like, the Master, and he used to be this, like, good guy and stuff like that, and then, you know, got his, like, mind wiped or whatever, and he's been manipulated into being this bad guy, and, you know, this entire time the Doctor's responsible. I don't remember the entire theory, but I remember it was like the Doctor and the Master had basically switched places, and, you know, the Master held resentment for that. But really, the Master finds this stuff out about the Doctor somehow, and just holds a grudge against it for some reason. Like, I don't get why the Master's the one that has to find it out. I don't get why the Master would care so much. You know, I guess because I think his reasoning is like, you know, oh, there's a part of you in me always, you know, and that I hate that, you know. But it's I think it's way more interesting if, you know, he's his personality is actually, like, affected by it, like, you know, because the Master and the Doctor are friends from childhood. You could, like, do so much with, you know, they were connected for ages. Maybe they're even fucking related, which would make all the times they have sex really weird. But, like, you know, there's so many different ways, and I think the Master just being grumpy, he regenerates because of the Doctor, is kind of just a bland reason for it. But
we could go. We will probably cover that more next week. But do you want to start the episode now?
Yeah, we might as well.
We've spoken enough about Chibnall and how we had so much hope for him, and then he just kind of let us down. And the centenary special is a month away, so maybe there's still hope yet.
Allegedly, a month
we'll
away.
Find out.
Allegedly, a month away.
We'll see.
It's never coming out.
The systems didn't stop him, Doc.
I know. They destroyed everything we brought with us. I know.
We haven't got anything else to defend ourselves or them.
I know! Listen to me. Do not argue. Go with the humans. Help them, get them out of here. You won't make it back to the TARDIS alive. Make sure you're with them.
What about you?
I'll hold them off.
How are you going to do that?
This isn't a discussion. We're not just going to leave you. Yes, you are. You have to. All of you. No questions. Get out. I've been so reckless with you. What are you talking about? You're human. If they capture you, they'll convert you. I'll find you. Get safe now!
Our episode begins in space, as we have voiceover from a Cyberman, as we are pushing through, like, wreckages through space, and he's just talking like, the Cybermen will rise again, and we will have a good fucking time about it. And we push into Cyberman's eye, and we get the Doctor Who intro. It's a very short cold open, but it's very, very cool. I think it's very eerie, you know, sets the theme for the episode very well.
I really like the open because it obviously it foreshadows the Cybermen in space that they're just floating out there for some reason. Was that ever explained why they're just floating out there? I'm guessing they're just, like, dead Cybermen from one of the battles from the Cyber War. But also, do they need oxygen to survive, or are they?
No, they're in robot suits. Yeah, you can justify a robot suit will mean they don't need oxygen. They've enhanced themselves. They've upgraded beyond oxygen.
Okay, so what killed them if they're just out in space?
The lasers that shot them their heads off.
Yeah, but there's some of them without their heads off, I think, later on in the episode, unless I'm mistaken.
That's where the voiceover's coming from. That's them talking. They're just, like, fucking stuck in space. Or no, it'll be the coldness of space freezes their joints, you know, and kills the organic material inside.
Nice weather we're having there, aren't we?
You know?
That's where a conversation just about the weather. It just the camera just zooming in on its eye and the intro starting. That's fucking ace, and I wish you would do that more often.
It's the nicest transition to the intro because usually it's just a hard cut. This is a very, very smooth transition to the intro. It's very, very, very good. And after the intro, we have a complete change in tone as we are in like what looks like the 1910s maybe, as a couple's riding the bike and they see a baby just kind of on the road, and they pick it up, take it to the police, and they're like, we'll look after him. And we're kind of flashing through this kid's life as they get like adoption papers and they adopt the kid as their own, and they're growing with him and stuff like that. And it's this stuff for me, rewatching it, knowing that Chibnall was adopted and how much of that his own like influence in that he put into this story itself, that pulls on my heartstrings a bit whenever an adopted kid comes up, because it comes up a bit even like outside the Timeless Child. There's quite frequent mentions of adoption and adopted kids, especially in season 11. It's worth keeping an eye out for, just how often he actually uses that influence in his own writing. But the kid, eventually ends up getting sick, and the lady goes, okay, we're going to have to find you a doctor. And then we transition deliciously into the doctor popping up in the future.
Do you remember what this storyline is about? Because I think it's...
Not at all.
If I remember correctly, it's the distorted memories. No, it's the distorted memories of the Doctor, but it's through the Time Lord database.
Is it?
And that's keeping the archive of the history of the Time Lords for some. I don't remember, but it's definitely the Doctor's story, because at the end, Brendan is holding the clock, and that's representing that this is the Doctor, and he was adopted and all that. When I was first watching this episode, I was like, yeah, that's definitely the Cybermen, because why would you open up with the Cybermen narrating the story?
Yeah.
If I isn't the Cybermen in the flashback.
Because I haven't seen the Timeless Child episode yet for next week, I don't really remember what this is building to, but I remember watching this episode for the first time, seeing this kid and thinking, oh, this is the origin for the lone Cyberman that we're seeing. Yeah. That's what I remember it being about. I honestly don't remember it being about the Doctor, but we'll see. Maybe it was, and I just wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, from what I remember, the Master basically explains, oh yeah, this is what is kept in the record of the Time Lords, and it's basically like a fairy tale, but it's actually your story, Doctor. This is your story of how you were adopted, and basically it turned into, well, we used your power to become Time Lords ourselves, which is... we'll get there, but that's a stupid decision. The whole thing's stupid.
It's a choice. It's a choice. It's certainly a choice. To be honest, when I first saw this, I was like, did I sit on my remote or something? This isn't Doctor Who, right? Yeah, it's a very different tone from the Cyberman head in space that we just had. But it's pretty, and it's well written enough that you instantly fall in love with his parents' characters, it's remarkable how well Chibnall can write characters when he wants to. Yeah. Because these guys don't have a lot of screen time, don't have a lot of dialogue, and you're like, oh, I like them.
And the first time I saw this, when the child got ill, I was like, okay, this is how he becomes a Cyberman, because he's ill, and the parents trying to find a way to keep him alive, and we find a way to convert him into Cyberman to keep him alive forever and all that. And find a doctor, because the doctor is going to come in and save the Cybermen later on in life.
For me, I just kind of assumed he was going to be the Cyberman, and then later on the episode when he gets electrocuted with the headphones on, I was like, it's like the cyber ears, get it? Because he's going to be the Cyberman.
Yeah, that too. It feels like it should have been the Cyberman, but for some reason it's just the Doctor, from what I remember.
Well, we'll see if you're right or not next week. But we transition to the Doctor standing in the distant future with the fam, as she has elected calling them. It is a name for the fucking group I hate it whenever she says the fam. I want to die inside. But they're all carrying very heavy equipment, and the Doctor's like, oh, we're in the far future, and there was a cyber war, and all the humans are dead except for like a handful of humans. I'm just going to rip that Band-Aid off right now. Which is a cool idea. It's very Terminator-esque. It's like the landscape they're in, and the action set pieces and stuff reminds me heavily of Terminator Salvation. If you remember that hit movie from notorious for fucking Batman's freak out on set.
Oh yeah, good for you.
Yeah. Oh, good for you. Yeah, great movie. It's fine actually. It's an interesting idea for a Terminator movie for sure.
what was his name? Anton Yelchin. That was a good movie in the film.
I love Anton Yelchin.
And then he died in a freak car accident.
Died in the worst way possible.
Yeah,
the absolute fucking worst way possible.
He was trying to get his mail when his car rolled and crushed him. Like, Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, pinned him against a wall and he just slowly died. Like, I cannot imagine a more painful fucking death for such a talented man.
I know.
Like, because he's so good.
That was an alright movie. The twist where the lead character is basically a Terminator himself was fun.
Yeah, and it had a CGI naked Arnold for like a few scenes. But for me, I was more just happy to have a Terminator movie that wasn't a convoluted time travel film. It was just in the future, and it was just this cool post-apocalyptic action film. You know, it wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel and getting convoluted with time travel stuff. I've still not seen the newest Terminator film.
Yeah, the newest Terminator film is quite good. It's probably the best one since Terminator 2, but that's not saying much.
Interesting. We go down and we find a group of survivors that are like just arguing with one another, and we find out that there's not really a lot of them. The fam make their way down and they're like, hey, we're gonna help you out, don't fucking question why or how we're here, we're just doing it. And they go around and they start setting up devices, and I actually really like this scene that we get with the fam, that I have to call them through gritted teeth, setting up devices, because we do see how much the companions have changed. Like from like season 11, episode 1, where they're like, oh my god, there's no aliens in Sheffield. I don't know what you're doing, Doc. To this one where Graham is explaining like what exactly a Cyberman is and their weaknesses and what exactly this giant metal ball technology in front of them is going to do. Like, they are now seasoned time travelers with the Doctor, you know?
Yeah, this episode does a really good job of explaining, oh yeah, these characters know the ins and outs of being a time traveler. Obviously, they're not as good as the Doctor knowing these things, but they're able to figure out their head away, figure out what to do in situations, and it's really nice. Cut to like season 13 where Yaz is walking around with what would the Doctor do on her hand.
I forgot about what would the Doctor do. Oh god. Oh, so good. So good. Oh my god.
But yeah, this scene also does a good job of like setting up the supporting cast as well, because we learn that they're not fighters, they're like teachers, builders, child carers, whatever you want to call them. And yeah, and it's like, yeah, these people are not prepped for war and they feel like real people. Just, it's quickly established these people are real. They're not characters I'm deeply invested in, but I get a sense of who they are. And they don't feel like they're bloating the episode like most supporting cast members do in Chibnall episodes.
Yes, I agree. We also get introduced to a character, and we get introduced to this character for no particular reason, definitely not because he's going to die, but Ryan is chatting with this dude, explaining to him how force fields work, and he's like, come meet my brother. He doesn't talk, but you can tell him that things are going to be okay now, right? Things are going to be okay. And, you know, they're shaking hands and they're, like, greeting each other. And then, oh no, the fucking TIE Fighter Cybermen heads are coming to attack. Handles is really pissed he's been left out of a lot of adventures as the Cyber heads come flying. And the Doctor tells everybody to, like, hide. They tell them, I think she's like, don't run, you know, like, make sure you're hiding and shit. Just hide from these Cyber heads, because our equipment that we've set up is definitely going to work. It's going to protect you. I think that's mainly her reason, because she's so sure that her force fields and there's the fucking Yaz has got, like, a thing that shoots gold, because Cybermen are allergic to gold. Get it? It's like the original Cybermen, which is, it's fun. There's a lot of fun Cyberman lore that gets mentioned in this episode, and all the cyber designs. Like, we see a classic, like, updated-ish version of a Cyberman later in the episode. We have the David Tennant era Cybermens mixed with the Moffat era Cybermens. You know, there's Cybermens galore. And what I do like about this episode is the Cybermens actually kind of feel threatening. You know, and that's what I liked about the lone Cyberman as well, is he feels threatening.
I can't remember the last time the fucking Cybermen were threatening. I'm not. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Oh, no, you're frozen. You're back.
Am I good?
Okay, you're back.
I'm scratching my head.
You're back now. You froze for a long time. Yeah, you did. You're back.
But yeah, I can't remember the last time if Cybermen actually feel threatening. Here, it's obviously a Cyberman war, and it's a unique idea because it explores, oh yeah, the Cybermen are scary as shit. They're as threatening as the Daleks. Because usually when the Cybermen are on screen, they're just basically walking around slowly, and if they touch you, you're dead.
Yeah.
That's basically their whole gimmick.
You know,
Yeah.
the Daleks say exterminate, the Cybermen go upgraded or deleted.
Yeah.
Like
You could, like, other episodes kind of established, right? You could basically just get in a car and just drive away from a Cyberman.
yeah. Yeah, they did. But this one really builds up their, like, arsenal, you know, with the flying heads that come in fucking shooting lasers as the main ground force pushes up. You know, they actually have more than just walking around going, "Zah!" Which is very, very good. And then we get a pretty long little action set piece. But I do want to say, it's a pretty fucking good looking action set piece. Like, I think it's like shot and color graded to look like a war. It's the most war-esque Doctor Who's ever looked since, I think, maybe even the 50th anniversary. Like, since the Time War, I don't think we've seen war, quote-unquote, style footage in Doctor Who style, like, set pieces as good as this in a long time. It's quite refreshing to see, because this fucking... There's dark bits in this episode, you gotta say, you know?
Yeah, the kid getting murdered was fucking dark, and the Doctor basically standing over his dead body being like, oh, fuck, I caused this to happen. Like, fuck.
Because,
the action scene is fucking ace, and just, obviously, the cyber drones are coming in, and that's good use for drone cameras, because the two are connected. And there's a great drone shot where the Cyberman head is going through a window of a bombed out building. And that's a fucking ace shot, and just all the drone shots in this episode are brilliant. I really like the cinematography in this episode.
Yeah, but, you know, the kid that doesn't talk that was introduced, definitely not because he's going to die, ends up panicking, running, getting shot. Another lady runs after him, gets shot as well, and then they defeat the Cyberheads. So I think they just fly away. I don't know how they defeat the Cyber. I think they do just fly away, because it's like a bombing run.
Do you think the kid doesn't talk because if he talked, we would have to pay him more? So we were like, okay, we have to save money here, and we just have to make it so the kid doesn't talk.
I would like to believe that was just a happy coincidence. But yeah, it's definitely one of the major considerations, I'm sure. But that kid dies, as does the other lady, and the Doctor comes out and she's like, holy shit, those guys died. Okay, you regular survivor humans, you need to fucking get on your ship and get out of here. And then the fam show up and they're like, hey Doc, nothing worked. Everything failed. You know, all this stuff failed. And the Doctor just fucking snaps and she's like, yes, I understand. I know they failed, you know, but you guys need to go. You need to leave. You can't go back to the TARDIS because they'll kill you. They'll turn you into Cybermen. You need to shut up and listen to me right now. And I really fucking like Jodie's Doctor when she's like this. I really like her when she's being aggressive and assertive. A phenomenal performance from her.
Yeah, this goes back to what we were saying the last episode, The Haunting of Villa Diodati, where Chibnall basically wrote the script being like, oh yeah, the last time the Doctor met the Cybermen was when Bill Potts died, and also she's remembering Adric, which was his like traumatic childhood memory of Doctor Who. Adric dying. I feel like Chris Chibnall relates quite a lot to Adric. You haven't met him yet, but he's basically a smart ass kid who tries to be the smartest person in the room. That feels Chibnall energy to me. It feels like Chibnall relates to him. But yeah, it's nice with the Doctor. He's like, oh yeah, shit, I have humans around me, and if they die, I'm going to be alone, and it's going to be sad. So yeah, I need to get the humans out of the way.
Yeah. And begrudgingly, everybody listens, and the Doctor's like, I'm going to go fucking take on the Cybermen by myself. And we get a fucking badass shot of the lone Cyberman walking through the desert as fire kicks, and the fucking soundtrack kicks in, and it is this, like, awesome tinny synth rock shit, and it's the coolest villain soundtrack I think Doctor Who has ever had. Like, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, we were talking about the soundtrack of the Jodie era off camera earlier on, and we were like, yeah, this soundtrack is underrated. Like, there's a lot of good songs that the composer really makes. It's not like Murray Gold's like opera music, but it's like, I don't know what we call it. Like,
I think that it's interesting because I'm rewatching season 11. I'm listening to the soundtrack a lot more because obviously the composer, whose name I tragically forget right now, is leaving the show with Chibnall, so we're not going to get any more of his compositions. But like, all of his soundtracks, are very thematic and appropriate for the time era and the setting that we're in. So if they're in like like say the jungle during the tribal times, there will be like drums and there'll be appropriate sounding instruments and stuff like that. Whereas I feel like Murray Gold would always just be like, ooh, ah, ooh.
Yeah. Like earlier on when we had the flashbacks in Ireland, the music sounds like an Irish folk tale song.
Yes.
It feels like it's got like the violin strings and whatever. It works for the themes.
The music is always era appropriate to what's going on. So this is, they're in the future, they're dealing with Cybermen, so it's very robotic-y, but it's very run down and dystopian, so it's very like grungy and heavy still. There's the idea behind the soundtrack for every single one of these episodes is phenomenal. And I can't believe it's taken me so long to actually notice and appreciate it, but it's real good. The soundtrack in this era is phenomenal. Yeah.
And if you compare that to like Murray Gold in 2011, 2012.
Don't you dare. Don't you fucking dare. Don't you try to get me to say it. I will say it. It's fucking great. It's a great song. I will not back down.
It's a great song, but overused. Where every time the Doctor saves the day, Murray Gold is like, shit, I know what to use. I am the Doctor. Perfect song for this scene.
It is the only song that consistently gives you goosebumps every time you hear it.
Look, I love this song, but every time it comes on, I'm like, oh, it's this song again.
Yeah,
and I get distracted from what's actually happening in the episode. Whereas whenever there's a song that's used by the guy, I can't also remember his name. We'll get there eventually.
Maybe it's maybe the issue with Murray Gold is because he gave everybody every character has a theme, and David Tennant's theme is very fucking iconic as well, and he played whenever he was doing badass Doctor moments. There was always that the choir singing as the fucking violins were going and stuff like that. And whenever Matt Smith was doing his badass things, I Am the Doctor would play. I think maybe Murray Gold fell into the trap that Moffat had Matt Smith do a monologue every second page, and he just assumed that was oh well, fuck it, this is a cool moment. Because Matt Smith just fucking gave monologues for all of his episodes. But
he did, yeah. He's the most monologue-y Doctor.
And it was brilliant. I could listen to Matt Smith monologue all day. But the lone Cyberman shows up, and Jodie's like, hey, you and we're going to have a fight. And then it turns out that the lone Cyberman's like this total bitch because he brought his friends, and Jodie was like, no, I was going to do 1-1. But this guy was like, nah, we're going to gang up on you. And Jodie was like, hey, that's not fair. But yeah, it's cool.
Apparently there's only 2 other Cybermen that's left over from this war.
Yeah, and they're both from the other dimension. They're both David Tennant era Cybermen from this fucking mirror universe.
They're definitely not from the other dimension because we don't have a cyber...
The cyber logo, I guess. But why do they have the exact same armor? Because the Cybermen from this universe have different armor. Established different armor. Why do they have the same voice? The Cybermen from this universe have a different fucking voice.
No, earlier on in the Moffat era, they brought over some of these Cybermen into the mainstream universe. Like I forget, Pandorica Opens versus Cybermen from the Russell T Davies era. It's just standing around for no reason. I think also in Closing Time and the other Cybermen episodes from the Moffat era, I definitely don't remember.
I guess it's just nostalgia, isn't it? That's all it is. That's why they're there. It's just nostalgia. And
out of all the designs, they're the most solid. They're not the best Cyberman designs, but they're pretty decent.
It's my favorite Cyberman voice. It's the most terrifying Cyberman voice, I think.
Too robotic for me, but sure.
They're robot men. But the Cyberheads come back and they start attacking our human companions as Graham and Yaz are running into the ship. But Ryan gets left behind and they're like, oh no, what are we going to do? So Yaz and Graham get onto the ship and they basically, their scene ends with them flying off. But their ship that they get into is a cool as fuck little ship. The inside very purposefully looks like a TARDIS. It's got this big, light tube in the middle and this big overarching thing, but it's also like a carousel ride as the entire thing spins on the inside. It's a really cool little design. It's very grungy because this is in the Terminator end of the world period, but I really like this little ship. I think it's one of the best looking ship designs that Doctor Who's had in a while.
Yeah, there's also fun scenes where we're focused on Graham and Ryan, who's on the outside of the ship, and we're talking to the characters on the middle of the ship, and it's they're spinning around. It's really cool scenes. I think it's a really fun idea.
It is. It is a very, very fun idea. And it's also like, even if there's two people talking when they're like both on the spinning bit, when they're just talking, you see the background spinning around behind them. It just adds a bit of motion to static shots.
Yeah.
It makes things interesting to look at. It's very cool.
And it helps make an already fast-paced episode feel also fast-paced because it's like there's constantly motion in what's going on in the scenes.
Yeah. Even if people are just sitting down talking, it's still moving. Like, it's very cool. We then cut to Ryan, who's hiding behind a wall as the doctor just fucking jump scares him from behind. And she's like, "What the fuck are you still here?" And he's like, I got left behind." And the doctor's like, "That's chill. Here's a bomb I'm making. It's cool, isn't it?" And we cut into a warehouse where we see the lone Cyberman doing my favorite trick if you're looking for someone, is he walks into a room and he goes, "I know you're here," to scare them. But right, if they're not in that room, they didn't hear you say that, so you don't look like an idiot. So it's like a win-win either way if they're in that room or not. It's like,
okay, this is gonna make me sound mad, but sometimes when I was a kid, I went into places and I thought, I know you're reading my mind, to try and catch somebody who's a mind reader, because I was convinced that they existed, like Professor Xavier. And then if anyone ever looked at me, I knew they would be a mind reader.
that's great. That's brilliant. That's so good. That's great. Did you ever find one? Did you ever find a mind reader?
I think somebody did look at me once, but I think it was unrelated.
Oh no, it's definitely related, Scott. You got to track them down. You found Professor Xavier. But the kid's like, "Hey, don't worry, I'm gonna save you. I'm gonna reveal myself to the Cyberman with this is such a ridiculous plan." And he pops out and he's like, "Hey, you got me. I'm the only one here." And the Cyberman's like, "Ha ha ha! No, you're not." And he shoots the dude through the wall, killing one of our remaining humans. As he then starts this threatening monologue against the surviving human, and it's a pretty cool monologue where he's like, "I'll just kill you now, or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just let you go and explore the galaxy and just warn other people of what's coming for them, spread the myth of the Cybermen that we are back and that we are going to bring destruction and death." And like, that's a fucking cool monologue to have, isn't it?
Which, is a good plan for the kid to go out, because he must have known that this Cyberman was a monologue-y Cyberman who didn't kill him because of all these convoluted reasons, So,
Yeah.
it's a good idea for the kid to do that.
Yeah, because like, if you're that Cyberman, that kid pops out, that the other guy's behind the wall, why wouldn't you just go bang bang and shoot them both, and then you're halfway done, you can go home soon. But no, he loves talking, this guy. The doctor conveniently runs into the room and throws a grenade, saving the kids. And we get a not so great looking effect of the grenade exploding. I think it lingers on the shot a bit too long. So you see the explosion come up to the Cyberman. Then it's a hard cut to him bouncing against the wall. But we never see the motion between those two shots. So it's like he's standing and then he's thrown against the wall. It's very weird. But that's just a minor editing gripe, honestly. But Jodie, Ryan, and this kid whose name I just don't remember because it's probably something stupid like Yelbunger, because all the humans have really stupid names in the future apparently, run into a abandoned cyber ship, and Jodie hotwires it to fly away. What do you think of this Cyberman ship, actually, before we talk about anything else? Because it's got, like, speaking of Professor X, like X-Men fucking standing up piloting fucking pod things. They're really weird looking.
I like it. I really like it. I really like all the ships in this episode. They really look cool.
They do. I think they also look very sci-fi, which I like. And you get the two contrasts with the human ship being this grungy kind of brown shoveled put together thing, and the Cyberman ship is blue and chrome. It's very high tech, very Star Warsy at times looking. It's very up there. It's very cool.
And also, I like the Doctor just basically giving a little bit of backstory about how she used to hotwire warp drives as
like
a
Star
kid,
Trek,
or as a
like
teenager.
Star Trek. Yeah.
But I like it. It's a nice little bit of backstory for a Doctor. It isn't necessarily a backstory, but it adds to her character a little bit. We really get that.
I always enjoy whenever the Doctor says, "Oh, I used to do this as a kid," just as these little offshoot, because again, that plays into why I'm not a huge fan of the Timeless Child, because I like the mythos of the Doctor, and whenever they reveal that little, like, ooh, as a kid I did this, and you're like, oh shit, they did this as a kid? What? You know, it's like when Capaldi returned to Gallifrey, and he was talking with a lady that might be his mum, and you're like, what the fuck, that might be his mum? Oh my god. And it turns out it's not his mum, because his mum's actually like Space Hitler, but
the Doctor runs into his maybe mum quite often, because at the end of time, the lady there was maybe his mum, according to Russell T Davis. I guess she isn't maybe his mum
because we've met his mum. Yeah,
it's all weird.
But they fly off on the ship, and then we cut back to the 19-ishes with the Irish guys, as the kid is all grown up and he's no longer fucking ginger, which I was telling you this off screen. A kid as ginger as that kid was is as ginger as me. And if you're watching this on the video on demand on YouTube, you will see that I am extremely ginger. And I have been extremely ginger my entire goddamn life. Because when you're this shade of ginger, it doesn't fucking go away. You know, it doesn't turn brown like this actor's hair is brown. What's this nonsense? Where's my continuity? It's my biggest gripe with Chibnall. This is the worst thing Chibnall's ever done to Doctor Who.
Yeah, it is a bit of a weird casting choice, but basically this scene, Ben has him basically becoming a police officer. When I was watching this the first time, I'm like, oh, this is going to be RoboCop, basically. At the end, he's going to get injured gravely and then turn into a robot, a Cyberman. But no, it doesn't go that direction.
Yeah, it still so heavily seems to me like this is the Cyberman. I wish I remembered the title. Like, next week's gonna be such a revelation for me because this episode, like the plotting for it, so seems like it's talking about the lone Cyberman, doesn't it? Like the guy even kind of looks like him. It's weird.
Maybe I'm misremembering. I'm not sure. We'll find out next week.
We will.
Because I think I remember being like, oh, this isn't the Cyberman. Why is that a choice?
I don't remember that at all. I don't remember that.
But also the Cyberman talks about his children, and as far as we know, this Brendan dude didn't have children.
Not yet, but like he
dies. Life. He's an old man at the end.
Yeah,
of the
but then
episode.
he gets like his like mind wiped or whatever the fuck, doesn't he? And presumably reset. I don't know, because he's like a cyber dude. I don't know.
Yeah, but when he's holding the clock because he's a time traveler, like the Doctor,
or was it like it's like conditioning for Cybermen? It was like conditioning for the Cybermen so that they didn't realize the hell that they were in.
No, it's the Doctor getting her mind erased by her mom.
Maybe.
I always get tripped up when I'm referring to the gender of the Doctor, by the way.
Yeah, I don't
Is
remember.
her mum?
Their mum.
Yeah.
You just use gender neutral. But yeah, I don't remember at all where this plot line's going. So that'll be a big reveal next week. It's weird. Yeah.
But it feels very disconnected here.
But in the meantime, we cut back to Graham and Yaz on a ship, and the two other humans that are with them are like, oh my god, we've got to get the Fluxamashmoo to 70%. And the other guy's like, oh, we can't get the Fluxamashmoo to 70%, we'll all die. And the lady's like, oh, we're going to have to do it. And then we cut away. It's pointless jibber jabber about science spacecraft, isn't it?
I think it works because it kind of just shows how desperate they are. They have very limited resources and we need to get to this place. And also Ryan and Yaz are kind of in the know about how this operates, kind of.
Ryan and Yaz.
I mean Graham and Yaz. I get confused between Ryan and Graham sometimes.
Because they look so similar. They look
exactly.
But anyway, we're back with the Yaz and Doctor and the Yaz. The Yaz. We're back with the Yaz. We're back with the Doctor. Yaz isn't even in this scene. We're back with the Doctor, Ryan, and the random human that they decided to bring with them on the Cyberman ship. The random human is flying it because we find out that he's been in this war since he was 4 years old. Like he's that guy from Rogue One, Andor. That comes out like next week or this week. Next week.
It does.
Yeah.
Jesus,
yeah.
I need to rewatch Rogue One because I remember nothing about Andor. The character.
Don't worry, Andor's a prequel, so you don't need to worry. This will tell you everything you need to know.
Good point. I guess I could watch Rogue One after season 2 ends.
It's a 3-season thing they're doing, isn't it?
No, it's a 2-season thing.
Is it
12
2
episodes each.
Is it? Oh, okay. Then yeah. But I'm looking forward to Andor. Anyway, that's way off topic.
I like the scene with the boy because you can feel the Doctor's guilt. Basically, her choice from the last episode caused the cyber war to happen, and she's the reason why he was raised this way.
But then they get a telephone call from the lone Cyberman who apparently can just call any ship in the Cyberium. I guess he knew exactly which one they were on, and he FaceTimes them.
Maybe is it his ship?
It could be. Maybe it is. What's he calling from if he's not in his ship, though?
It would be funny if there's a scene where he's just like, shit, what's my phone number? I never fucking call myself. I don't know my own phone number.
But this is a scene where he is yet again monologuing, and he's basically talking about how, like, you know, he was scrap and he was like disjointed and blah, but no, his real purpose is to unite the Cyberium and bring chaos to the universe and turn everybody into Cybermen and be the new leader. Villain monologue, gonna villain monologue, isn't it? And Doctor's like, no, we will stop you.
But also his speech basically makes him sound like he was adopted because he was discarded and then he was chosen. And this is obviously the theme of.
And then guess what the next scene is? The next scene is with the fucking cop guy. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But also he says he was a willing recruit to the Cyber Empire, which made me think of the scene we just saw with the Irish man where he's a willing recruit to the police force.
Yeah,
it's all connected, but also not connected. And also, there's a really poorly written line here where the Doctor says, "Quite a grudge you've got against humanity, considering you used to be one." The Cybermen used to be humanity. I feel like I could have gotten a second draft.
You could have just gone, "Quite a grudge you've got against humans."
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's...
Or quite a grudge you've got against humanity, considering you used to be part of it. Or something like that.
Yeah, either of those sentences make sense. Yeah. Yeah. It feels like he wrote both those sentences at once. The episode continues as we flash back to the 19 as Irish cop guy is chasing Irish criminal guy, and he's like, "Hey, come on, stop!" And they're at a cliffside, and then the guy pulls out a gun, and he's like, "Hey, you don't want to shoot me?" They kind of like twirl around each other, and eventually the Irish cop gets shot and falls off the cliff, cracking against the rocks. But we see him quickly wake up again, and he's like, "Oh my god, I'm okay. I'm alive. Everything's fine." And he gets, like, you know, tested on by doctors and stuff like that, and he's like, you know, just going about his merry old life again, back in it, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's a bit strange that he lived. I guess he just got lucky." You pointing out that this is like a metaphor for the Doctor, I can see-ish now with the experimenting, like, you know, this kid died, and then they regenerated, though, so let's run experiments and see, like, what exactly is causing this, you know, and then, discover something interesting about them.
I can't remember exactly what the details are, but I presume it's like, let's see if I presume they found out the Doctor regenerated pretty early on. And they're like,
if I remember in Flux, they find out like immediately because they like test on them as a kid like 1,000 billion times. Like,
oh god, yeah. Flux is something I don't remember much of. Do you think it will go back to Flux because you're watching it with your roommate? I wonder what he'll think of Flux.
I think he'll love it. I think he'll fucking be like, "This is the greatest piece of Doctor Who I've ever seen." And I'll be like, "You're right." And then we'll high five.
But yeah, when he originally fell off a cliff, I'm like, this has got to be the RoboCop moment where he dies in action. And then they bring him in with his hooking up to all his technology, and he turns into Cyberman. But it doesn't go that way. He just wakes up like... It kind of also reminds me of Superman, adopted baby who's kind of immortal.
Yeah, it is very Superman-ish. But yeah, no, I see the Doctor parallels looking at it through that lens. But whenever I see it, I always look at it through the Cyberman lens because that's really how it's presented. It's never really presented. I guess it's because they're building for a twist. Did you say it's a twist? What they're doing? I guess it is.
Again, they seem to, like, the scene before this was obviously Cyberman talking to the Doctor, so it feels like it must have been a Cyberman. And Cyberman opens the episode narrating it, so it feels so weird, but it's not the Cyberman, it's the Doctor.
Yeah.
Like, I guess, I'm not sure, maybe it was meant to be an intentional misdirect.
Yeah, like, your expectations have been subverted.
Yeah.
Wahaha.
But at the same time, I guess most of the viewers who isn't really into Doctor Who is like, why is suddenly we keep cutting to this Irish man? What's the point? Like,
Yeah, you can tune in next week and find out. As the master will tell you in one sentence, in between the 50,000 other sentences he's saying. Like, yeah.
but at
that's
the
a weird one.
same time, I would watch the adventures of this Irish super cop man.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like how it's this kind of like interesting visual metaphor storytelling thing. You know, it's not being spoon fed to you what it is until next episode. I kind of like, it feels like Chibnall's kind of trying to trust his audience to get what he's going for. But then in the next episode, he's just kind of what you're saying, just spills the beans, and it's like, this is exactly what I mean, beat for beat. Whereas, you know, sometimes things are best left up for interpretation. You know.
Like the best part about we Better Call Saul just finished, and the best part about that show is it leaves everything up to interpretation. We never have a scene of Saul Goodman being like, "This is why I did this," and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, this is why I'm doing this right now. This is what's driving me to do this right now. Like,
which is why a lot of people hated that final, because it wasn't spoon fed to them.
I love that final. So fucking
It was
good.
so good.
Yeah. But in the meantime, Yaz and Graham and their humans are in the ship. There's a banging about happening outside the ship. They're like, what the fuck is that? And then it turns out that it's Cyberman corpses. They're in like a giant space graveyard with a bunch of dead Cybermen. And they're like, wow, that's spooky. And it looks cool. It's a very nice shot. I very like the pan out from the ship into just the corpses of Cybermen everywhere is very fucking eerie. It's very cool.
And yeah, the special effects shots in this episode look pretty solid overall. It feels very blockbustery for Doctor Who.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It feels kind of like the 50th anniversary scale. You know, it's this huge war that's happened. You know, it's very large scale. Doctor Who, which we don't often get. But then they're like, hey, we need to do something with the ship to get it into this place with the thing, and if we all like do this one thing and hope really well and close our eyes and click our heels, we'll do it. And then the ship, they like press a button and the ship goes haywire and all the things go off and it starts spinning and it launches them into this space station. It takes like fucking 10 minutes for that to happen. It's ridiculous, but that's where they end up.
I do like it because it's Ryan and Yaz being like, they're not like, oh yeah,
Ryan.
Oh my god. It's Graham and Yaz. Not, they aren't looking at their hands being like, what would the Doctor do? They're like, okay, we have to figure out a plan. We have to have some optimism because we need optimism because it's a good thing to have, you know. We need to be a glass half full type people, you know.
Yeah. We then cut to the evil Cyberman's ship. And he's still monologuing. I don't think he's realized the Doctor's hung up. Because he's still talking about, like, you know, the Cybermen will be in charge. It's our destiny and fucking shit like that. Like,
that's actually a good point because last episode we kind of like Mary Shelley was like, okay, there's a soul inside of you, and that led me to believe this episode would lead to him, you know, exploring his humanity, his past a little bit. That's why I thought the flashbacks were there for. But in this episode, he's just monologue after monologue. He's not as effective as a villain as he was in the first episode.
Yeah. He doesn't really do too much. Like, he kills the humans and gives some good monologues, but yeah, he's not really too much of an active character. We never really learn anything new about him, do we?
Yeah, because last episode it was like we find out that he killed his child, he snapped his neck and killed his family, and he was once human, and he almost killed that baby, but didn't because he was weak. And those were really great character moments. Here he's just like, yeah, I'm gonna kill everyone because I'm a Cyberman and I want everyone to be Cybermen, and it's basically his whole thing. It's not that interesting. The next episode, it just turns into a master monologue in which he's kind of an afterthought after this episode.
Yeah, he really is. He really is. But we then cut to a random old man because this episode needs more characters. And he gets a telephone call from the Doctor looking for, what's his name? Yo Shara or something like that.
I literally had a subtitle on screen and I read it and I'm like, I'm going to tell him that, but then the subtitle went off screen and now I can't remember it. And it was Ko Sharmis or something like that.
Ko Shawarma man. Yeah. But the doctor's like, we're looking for this planet. We're looking for the planet of Yo Shawarma. And he's like, oh, I'm Yo Shawarma. And she's like, wait, Yo Shawarma's a person, not a planet? And he's like, yup, that's me, Yo Shawarma.
Yeah, Ko Sharma. If it feels like she should have been aware of, like somebody could have told her, yeah, we're looking for this person, rather than we're looking for Ko Sharma. We're going to Ko Sharma.
We're going to Ko Sharma, yeah.
Because everyone's incredibly vague about this person for some reason. Like, I'm not sure exactly what he is, what he does.
He takes people to to Gallifrey, isn't it? That's what he's doing. Is he's like shipping people off to Gallifrey so that they can be safe from the cyber war.
Yeah, because Gallifrey is here for no reason, really.
Gallifrey is like in like a bubble or something now because it was, which makes so fucking, because it was saved. Like Matt Smith saved it, and then Capaldi saved it because Capaldi found it and was like, now everybody's safe, you know. And then he punched that dude. Like
yeah, and then at the beginning of this season, the Master's like, doesn't the Master
Gallifrey's
say
gone or something? Yeah.
Yeah, he reveals Gallifrey's gone. I mean,
again,
it comes back again. It's like, the showrunners never know what to do with Gallifrey. We've talked about it before. It's very strange.
Which is a shame, because I think there's potential in Gallifrey, because like the Time Lords are assholes, and if you really lean into the Time Lords being assholes, you could do some interesting stories. And the conflict of the Doctor, because the Doctor is a Time Lord. The Doctor was born into upper class. You know? Or the Doctor wasn't born into upper class, but went into upper class because they were like born in that shed or something. I guess with Flux it changes everything, but
it really does.
yeah, I don't know.
Apparently, that Gallifrey series that Big Finish does is really good because it's all about the politics of Gallifrey, which is something that's interesting. But the classic series kind of handles it in a boring way. Surprise, surprise. and then Russell T Davies is like, I was bored by the Time Lords back then, so Time Lords are gone. And then Moffat's like, the Time Lords are back, kind of, but not really.
I like what Moffat did with the Time Lords. Everything I think Moffat did with the Time Lords was interesting. Like the 50th anniversary, super fucking interesting take to do with the Time Lords. What is it, Hellbent?
Yeah,
fucking
Hellbent.
The greatest thing you could do with the Time Lords. Matt Smith's Regeneration, where the Time Lords come back, which I think still works with Flux. You can justify that still working with Flux, where they come back and they're like, here's 13 more regenerations. Where it's just them covering their ass so that the Doctor doesn't find out that he's like the Timeless Child.
Was Hellbent like the last actual Time Lord episode? Because
Heaven Sent, wasn't it? Heaven Sent was the last Time Lord episode, which was Hellbent and Heaven Sent are the two fucking sequels.
So Heaven Sent was the episode where he goes to Gallifrey and he punches or kills the old man and he regenerates it into a black woman. And
Heaven Sent's the finale, isn't it? And Hellbent's when he's punching the wall. He's like,
I think
ow,
so.
ow.
The ordering of those episodes always confuses me, but I don't remember liking that series final, and I think that's the last thing they ever did with the Time Lords up until this point.
It is. Yeah, a lot of people didn't like Heaven Sent as a final. I don't remember it, but I remember Hellbent's one of the best fucking episodes of Doctor Who ever. Hellbent's fucking phenomenal.
I remember disliking the final, but I can't remember why, because it's been... When was it? Like 2014? Like almost a decade ago? Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, long time ago. Yeah, we'll need to cover it at some point. But in the meantime, Graham and that are inside a big ship, and they're just kind of walking through it being like, fuck me, this ship's big, isn't it? And then they all split up and look for clues, Scooby-Doo style. Graham is with this one lady who's like his age, and she flirts with him a bit. She's like, oh, you're a bit weird, but not in a bad way. Wink, 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 wink. And Graham's like, oh, fuck, got a boner. As they walk into the 137th floor, I think it is, which is, of course, Graham's favorite number. And they see all these various pods full of... updated version of the classic look for the Cybermen, and I fucking really like this look for the Cyberman. Like, if this is what the Cybermen looked like in the... Oh, I've frozen. Hang on. If this is what the Cybermen looked like in the Russell T Davies bit when he brought them back, I would have been totally on board for that as well. Like, it's a good updated look for Cybermen for sure.
I'm kind of conflicted because to me it's still kind of too robotic-y. I know Cybermen are essentially robots, but they're also people inside of the costumes. And I think there's a point where it gets too technological with the Cybermen, it's like I forget.
I think
there's humans inside.
But I think that's the joy. I think the Cybermen have that Darth Vader stuff to them where they're supposed to be this intimidating robotic presence, and they're like, oh, I am a robot, I will kill you. And then you like crack open their helmet and you're like, holy shit, there's a person inside. That makes me feel things. I think the more robotic the Cyberman is, the greater the reveal that there's a human being tortured inside,
Like, one of my favorite Cybermen designs, we're about to cover it, is in the 10th Planet, where they basically just have a sock over their head, and they're still roboticized, and you look inside of the eye holes, and you see the human eye underneath it. It's really creepy. And they brought it back with the Peter Capaldi two-parter with the two masters. And I really like that design, because it's like, yeah, they're humans still, but they're kind of roboticized, they're kind of...
I think the sock on their head, though, is like, it's
fun.
like a cheap design. It doesn't look good. Like, it's not a good looking costume. I liked it in the Capaldi episode. I thought that was fun, a fun callback to bring them back, but it's a bad design. Like,
I really love it. For some reason, for me, it's really creepy and effective.
I look at it and I go, cheap. But we cut back to the fucking lone Cyberman as he's still monologuing. He's just talking bullshit at this. He's just like, the Cyberman's visions is fulfilled and we are the Cybermen and we will be victorious. As he's marching off with his two guards that are just kind of nodding with him. Who's he talking to? Like,
yeah, I don't know. He's I guess he
still thinks he's on call with the doctor.
Not really people. It kind of, I wonder if I imagine just the two Cybermen behind him being like, oh my god, is this fucking twat still talking? Jesus
just
fucking Christ, just shut up already. Let's kill some
nod
people.
And smile. That's all we gotta do.
But yeah, it's a real shame that he's just monologuing this entire episode, because this is his really last episode as the main villain, because the next episode it's all about the Master. It's like, he had so much potential, and then Chibnall comes along and writes for him, and he's like, just monologue, man. And then the Master comes in next episode, and he's also monologue, man.
Yeah, there is a lot of story they're trying to pump out with this two-part finale, because this is the big reveal for the Timeless Child, and it's so complicated. And Chibnall's like, the only way to explain it is to have a character monologue it. And maybe that's what he was trying to do with Flux, where he didn't want to have so many monologues, so he was like, we'll do a linear story. But then he just like, and every story is going to be in it. It's going to have all the stories.
Because this two-parter would have been really fucking good if it was just a Cyberman. That's why this episode actually works, because it's mainly about the Cyberman, apart from those flashbacks where we kind of get into the Doctor's background as a timeless child.
How interesting would it be if you took this two-parter, and did to Flux what Flux was trying to do. So you stretched it over like 6-7 episodes as this huge arc, and you just showed, like, you start the episode with that haunting one, and the Doctor starts the war, and then fuck it, the next 4 or 5 episodes you're in that war. The Doctor's fucked up and she's trying to save everybody, and the companions end up getting like fucking PTSD and have to see all this shit, and that's why they end up leaving, because like, oh my god, you made me fight in a future war, what the fuck is this about? And then you have that slow reveal of like, oh, this is actually what it's all about, Doctor, we've discovered something about you. I don't know, just do something more interesting, because it feels rushed. I mean, that's the issue with this, isn't it? It's so much information so fast, it ends up feeling really rushed.
Yeah, next episode just feels like it's 3 different ideas packed into one, because we still got the Cybermen war going on, and then all of a sudden the Master's telling the Doctor about her background, and then all of a sudden the Cybermen are Time Lords, and then there's just, all I can remember is just like being overwhelmed kind of, and there's not a moment to breathe, and then the characters just feel lifeless really, because they don't really have anything to do, because there's not enough screen time for them. And obviously we'll cover it next week. I wonder if my opinion will change, but I don't see it happening.
Yeah, it might be the best episode ever. I don't remember, honestly. I have no idea. So our episode continues as Jodie is on the beach going towards Yo Shawarma, and she's like, hey, you're Yo Shawarma, what up? And he's like, oh my god, I never thought I'd see people again. Come walk with me as I deliver exposition. And he's like, people started coming through. We found this place, and they started like jumping through, and I was leading people through. And like an idiot, I stayed behind because I always had hope that more people would come. And Jodie's like, wow, what a noble cause. And he's like, it didn't feel very noble. And my first thought is because he's just been sitting around jacking off for 20 years. Like, but yeah.
Again, that brings in the theme of hope. which
Yeah.
kind of goes nowhere towards the end of the episode. Doesn't really tie into anything that goes on next episode, from what I remember.
I don't remember next episode at all, so fucking who knows. But yeah, this episode's very big on the hope, and this monologue is very much, the old guy's like, oh, I'll take you go through to see this safe place. It's gonna be fucking awesome. Everyone's gonna have a great time. It's super cool there. Lots of cool jacuzzis and stuff. It's great. And everybody's super on board. And he's like, just come with me, and I'll show you where it's at. As we cut off to the Cybermen attacking Graham and that, we get a really pointless bit of dialogue in this scene, I thought, where one of the humans goes on the computer and he's like, whoa, no wonder these guys beat us in the war. They're so more technologically advanced than us. I'm like, dude, they're fucking cyborgs. They have flying robot heads, and you're like, oh, I'm just now realizing these guys have got better technology than we do. Like,
It kind of goes with what we criticize Chibnall on quite a bit. Characters have to explain what's happening.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, these people are technologically more advanced than us. No shit. And then later on, Graham. I don't know why I keep getting those names confused, but Graham kind of closes the doors and is like, "We're Cybermen outside." After we see we're Cybermen outside.
Yeah.
Like,
we
just they kind of just go on to explain what's going on screen. This kind of feels like Chibnall again is writer for a Big Finish script rather than Doctor Who.
Yeah. Although, you know what? I'm going to give you a pass on this Graham Ryan debacle that's been haunting you this entire episode. Mainly because, for no reason, I confuse Eccleston and Capaldi's names, even though they don't sound similar either.
Yeah, and of course, Chris Eccleston and Capaldi never share a scene together or connected in any way, so the Graham Ryan thing makes more sense,
Graham is an old white dude, and Ryan is a teenage black man. What are you on about? They're so different.
Graham and Ryan are always in the same room together, so it's like, which one's Graham, which one's Ryan, It's like, it's like Graham and Ryan do this thing, and it's like, yeah, I don't know which one's which. I can't remember. I know the differences between the names.
It's like when Dan and Yaz are together in Flux. I'm like, which one's Dan and which one's Yaz? I have no idea. Like,
okay, that's not fair. But like, I don't know. Fuck off. Also, I'm looking forward to Dan meeting Graham in the Centenary special. That's going to be fun.
Old white man with old white man. It's going to be hilarious.
But we're not going to have the time to interact. We're going to be like, "Hello, you're old." Yes, I am.
It's going to be great, and that's going to be the best scene in the episode. But while we're on the Cyberman ship, there is a very cool scene where the lone Cyberman starts cutting open one of the regular cyber warrior dudes, and the Cyberman just starts fucking screaming. And the human lady's got this really great line where she's like, "We're on board with a Cyberman that makes Cybermen scream," just really sells to me like the threat of the lone. It's the one line of dialogue that actually sells the lone Cyberman as being a threat again in this episode. Is he makes Cybermen scream? He's such a fucking awful Cyberman. Other Cybermen are scared of him.
Yeah, but when we were watching this scene together, I was trying to figure out. I can't remember anything about why he's ripping open the Cyberman.
Next week is going to be full of revelations. It's going to be amazing.
But yeah, I think next week it's revealed. I think it's something to do with trying to get the Time Lord DNA into the Cyberman, which doesn't really make sense in that episode. It kind of falls apart near the end. But it's like, oh yeah, it's a cool concept in theory, but here it doesn't really add to anything. So it just feels like Chris Chibnall's like, oh yeah, this is a good idea, but I don't know what to do with it, so I'll just put it in anyway.
Yeah. We then go to the beach with the old man, where he's like, "Ooh, it's usually right here on the beach, and usually it if you walk close, you'll see it." And Jodie's like, "Oh, that's a bit strange. Let's walk close." And then everything becomes purple, and we cut to the old time. It's a very brief scene on the beach before we're cutting to this old timey bit. Because again, we've got the last 3 minutes, and Chibnall's like, "Oh God, I got 15,000 characters. Hang on." So everybody's about to get a 2-minute scene.
Yeah, when I was watching this, when the old man is like, go closer, I was expecting the old man to be like the master, maybe. Because I knew the master would turn up, and sometimes the master does these elaborate disguises. And I thought, yeah, maybe this is a new incarnation of the master. He's just...
I would love it if if we get, like in, was it a Sea Devils episode where the master rips off the guy's face?
Yes.
And it's the man. I would love it if we got a modern version of that where the old man takes off his face and it's fucking Sacha Darwin underneath being like, "Whoa, I'm the master!" Like, just fucking hamming it up all the way.
Yeah, it's better than him just appearing through the portal, because I don't like the Gallifrey stuff in this story. It just bothers me.
I think it's fun. But we cut back to the old time 19-ish times where our ginger turned brown hair turned old man is now a police officer retiring, and they're like, "Thank you for all your service. Here's this clock. Enjoy retirement." And he's like, "Oh, chill." Then he steps outside and things get a bit fucking horror movie-esque as he sees his father, young as he was as a boy, and he sees the police chief that young as he was as a boy, which, as you were, pointing out off camera, this is the doctor's mother running experiments because obviously she kept regenerating, stayed young and stuff like that, which it's cool. It's such it's a convoluted way of telling this story. I think, it's a very convoluted way, but it's an interesting way of telling it. And it's a separate from the Timeless Child stuff, it's a very cool little sci-fi thriller that's cut randomly between this episode, isn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't. The thing is, it doesn't work for the episode because it just feels so disconnected to everything. But on its own, if it was just a little short movie or something, I'd be like, yeah, that's sick. It has great direction, it has great music, it has great acting, it's fun.
You know what's annoying, right, is I agree completely with what you're saying. The issue that I have with this is because this is a Cyberman main focused episode, you're always thinking about the Cybermen and you think this must somehow relate to the Cybermen. And in that scene where he's getting electrocuted and he gets the headphones put on, this, like, it has to be done deliberately to make you think it's about the Cybermen, because he gets the headphones on, which already looks fucking Cyberman-esque, and they start electrocuting him and he's like, ah. And then what's the very next scene we see? We see a Cyberman waking up in its pod. Like,
I think it's always connected to the Cyberman in some way, because it always bookends the scene somehow.
Yeah, it has.
But then also the old man does have a clock, which obviously means he's the Time Lord, because time, get it? It's a clock. But yeah, it's just
so strange to have so much mirror imagery with the Cybermen, and for it to not be related to the Cybermen. I'm so interested in next week's episode, honestly.
It feels like Chris Chibnall is wanting to make a comparison between the Doctor and the Cybermen in some way, because they're both kind of adopted. That's the point he kind of makes earlier on in this episode. It feels like Chris Chibnall watched the Chris Eccleston episode Dalek and is like, yeah, what if the Doctor is like the Cybermen also? But it doesn't really fit to anything here. It just feels like an idea, like kind of a vague idea, but just doesn't connect to anything.
Yeah. But we cut away. I shouldn't say we cut away. The guy takes him into the chair, and they're like, "Oh, sorry, you're not going to remember anything." Then they electrocute him for a while, and that's the last we see of this storyline until next week.
I don't think it comes back next week.
Well, we get exposition about it next week. So
yeah.
But we then cut to the Cyberman as he's, just kind of marching about, and he's like, "Oh, I'm an evil man still." His scenes are basically pointless. He's just gathering his army. And we... Oh my god, we're at the end of the episode. All right, what the fuck? What the fuck? How do we get so fast to the end of the episode? Yeah. So... everybody's running away from the Cybermen. They're locked in the ship with them. The Doctor's like, fuck, I've got to try and save you guys, because she's on call with Graham, I think, at this point. And she's like, we're coming to get you. We're going through this portal. We're seeing what's there. Then the portal opens up and she's like, holy shit, it's Gallifrey. It's my home. It's Gallifrey's here, as the Cybermen are attacking Graham and Yaz and stuff like that. And then out through the fucking portal of Gallifrey, bang, there's the Master. And he's like, whoa, how's that for an entrance? As he looks at the camera and winks. He's like, oh boy, everything's about to change. I'm about to deliver exposition. You're not ready for this shit, Doctor. And I thought it was a really fun cliffhanger. I thought it's a really good hook to bring you into next week's episode. I think it's next week's episode that lets this cliffhanger down,
Yeah, it is a fun cliffhanger, and when you're watching it, it's like, oh yeah, the Master's now in this story. I guess he's going to work with the Cybermen, which I guess he technically does, because the Master
he
in the classic
manipulates
series,
the Cybermen, doesn't he?
Yeah. Because the Master in the classic series always works with the main villain. Mm-hmm. Like, we've seen that in the Sea Devils or the Demons, where he's working with Bok, our favourite boy.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, of course the Master might be working with the Cybermen, but I didn't think it'd be like the Master is connected to another storyline completely separate from the Cybermen. It's like goes into this whole Time Lord thing.
Yeah, the issue with the Master showing up is it's, oh no, here comes 15 more stories. You know, if it was just him working with the Cybermen to take over and he's like behind the cyber war, whatever the fuck, cool. It's just like he's just a big villain guy. Him, you know, having this entire other fucking plot going underneath, on top, and beside the other plot that's already happening, it makes things end up getting muddled. But I remember when it aired being fucking like, oh shit, you know, when Sacha Dhawan popped out. And I'm still not sold on his Master. I really like him as an actor. I think as a person, he seems like a fucking sound dude. His Master is really hammy, which isn't bad for a Master. I think the issue falls with Missy's storyline being perfect, you know, and the arc the Master goes on there being perfect, and then his one just being cackling evil, hates the Doctor again. There's no depth to his Master at all.
Yeah, to me, his incarnation of the Master, as well as John Sims' incarnation of the Master,
I love John Sims.
They both kind of feel very similar. They kind of go over the top. They both kind of feel like just over the top, really. They feel too manic, too crazy. They feel more like the Joker sometimes than the Master.
I think John Sims' one was justified with that, though, because his Master, like, the whole thing was he had literally lost his mind, you know? He was an insane person. And then when he dies and comes back as, like, the skeleton man, he was, like, genuinely even more insane. So and then when Missy comes in, she's more reserved, but she's still, like, kooky, and she's just like, oh, I like zapping people. And it's great. And then this one, he's just a fucking, just like chewing on the scenery, you know. He's just hammy, but it's good.
I fucking love his performance though, and I would want to see a Master more like the original Roger Delgado Master. He's more like a gentleman kind of Master. He's still kind of hammy in his own way, but I like Roger Delgado Master, and I want to see a return to form with that. That'd be nice. I would love that.
Yeah, it would be interesting. It would be interesting to see. But this cliffhanger with the Master showing up is how the episode ends. So, Scott, what did you think about Ascension of the Cybermen?
Yeah, as its own individual story, I really like it. I really like the concept of, you know, a battle zone with the Cybermen against humans. We've never really seen that before. We kind of saw it in like brief doses, like Attack of the Cybermen even had like a human versus Cybermen conflict, but it's never really been like a war zone. And I like that concept. It's kind of fresh for Cybermen, but Chris Chibnall kind of loses his grip on the main Cyberman. Last time he was more like a Frankenstein-y man who kind of had a soul, and it was like, it feels like his soul could have been more established, more explored.
Yeah, he's really pointless in this episode. Like, he starts off strong in this episode and then just turns into, the Cybermen will rise again! Like, in every scene he's in, you know?
It feels like last episode it was more of his human side that was shown. It was just interesting, the internal conflict between the human side and the Cyberman side, which is where I thought the flashbacks were going to go into, like his past and why he hasn't really been converted all the way. I thought that would have been an interesting idea, because that's what the fucking Frankenstein episode kind of established. But we were kind of going into who he is as a person rather than a Cyberman, which would have been fascinating, but no. Apparently he's just a man who likes monologues. But overall, it's a good episode. I really like the episode. It has good moments for Ryan, Yaz, Graham. They kind of feel like characters in this episode. The supporting cast is quite fun. They're interesting enough. It feels like a solid episode. It kind of lets down. It's kind of let down by the next episode. Phil, what is your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I mostly agree with that. This episode's very fast-paced, I think. Sometimes a bit too fast-paced. It doesn't hang around. Although, it's a very action-y episode, and it's not often we get an action-y episode of Doctor Who. And, you know, I am very established. I like it when two characters just shut up and talk. And like the episode stops for two people to have a conversation. That's my favorite episodes of Doctor Who. I'm never big on the actiony episodes, but this one, I think the action is fast and fun enough that it's entertaining. It's actually the dialogue parts of this episode that I think let it down, because like there's whole scenes with Graham and the humans, where they're just kind of talking about nothing, and they're not really establishing any much character stuff. They're not talking about too much story stuff, and it's fine, but it's just there to get them like, oh, the Cybermen are coming and attack now, run. But yeah, I think this episode is scarred by next week's episode a lot, because next week's episode is so fucking not great that this episode, which is pretty fine, like it's fine to good, like this is a pretty mid episode. It's fine. It's a fine episode. I didn't hate it.
Yeah. If the next episode was to this quality, or or even just a step below, I would say this is a great series final, because the series 11 final was like, that didn't feel like a final. It felt kind of odd.
Yeah, it's like the Battle of Ranskor Avkolos is the final. It's such a weird fucking choice for a final episode.
But if this two-parter made it consistent with both parts are like fast-paced action against Cybermen with humans, I would have been like, yeah, that's a fucking great time. That feels like a series final. I would have been happy to leave off the series, because we had a year and a half gap after this, which wasn't intentional because it was obviously made during COVID. But yeah, I would have been satisfied, but instead we get this garbled mess next week, which I'm kind of looking forward to go back into to see.
I'm really looking forward, mainly to see what fucking happens with this storyline. Is it about the Cyberman or is it about the Doctor? Which I don't remember at all. But yeah, I'm looking forward to next week's episode, more so knowing that it's bad. To try and redeem it. Can we redeem next week's episode?
Maybe we can see it in a new eye now. We know it's essentially about Chibnall's experiences being adopted. Maybe there's something in there. It's like, yeah, we can see where Chibnall's coming from. We kind of like this episode. We'll see.
Maybe, yeah. You have to download it next week and find out. But in the meantime, you can send us an email at whowatcheswhopod@gmail.com and tell us your opinions on the Ascension of the Cyberman, your opinions on Chibnall's era of Doctor Who, and your opinions on the Timeless Child story, and we will read it out in our monthly news podcast at the end of the month. That's whowatcheswhopod@gmail.com. In the meantime, you can find this podcast on Facebook at Who Watches Who, on Twitter at Watches Doctor, on YouTube at Who Watches Who. It's available in audio form wherever you listen to podcasts. There is a plethora of links in the description. You can find me on Twitter at Cloth223. You can find me on Twitch at something orange. We're fucking all over the place nowadays. Use the links, download, share, podcast. You hear me say this every week. I don't give a shit anymore. Who Watches Who Pod? Send us an email. Do it. David, you prick. But in the meantime, we'll see you next week for the Timeless Child. Bye-bye.
Bye.